This video is brought to you with the support of my patrons, with an extra special thank you to Barry, Critters Mai, Kaya, Mateo, Michael Galusic, Michelle, and Nikki Miskell. I've been reading my old journals. This is the last thing I'd ever thought would come of them, the composition books and the sketchbooks and the one Gryffindor crest faux leather number and the stacks and stacks of unlined moleskines, the ones I joyously covered in Entertainment Weekly clippings and pearls before swine strips and movie tickets and pictures printed from the internet during my college years, and the ones bare on the outside from post-grad life when that kind of self-expression moved from feeling like productive art to frivolous fun time that might better be spent reading or knitting or watching Parks and Rec. I've journaled sporadically for most of my life, relatively consistently for about 14 years, and mostly daily for just shy of a decade, amassing, at the time of writing, 31 finished and numbered volumes. I've thought about burning them. The contents are pure cringe fuel I'd never want a house guest stumbling upon, and I've always assumed I'd never have a reason to revisit them myself, much less be able to get through one without vowing never to show my face to any human ever again. But whether out of the same morbid impulse that led me to write, "Wow, it's going to be so embarrassing when I get murdered in a Best Buy parking lot and Sarah Koenig reads this," in an entry dated July 30th, 2016, or out of some sentimental notion that a piece of my soul is alive in these books, they've continued to pile up, tucked away in whatever increasingly large nook I can find in this year's apartment bedroom. And now I've been reading them. I know why I started this endeavor, what led me to the first ones I opened, a spiral-bound sketchbook with entries dated December 2009 through August 2010, and a large Moleskine Cahier journal covered in Lisa Frank stickers with entries dated August through October of 2010, volumes 11 and 12 respectively, chronicling my last semester of high school, the following liminal space of a summer, and my first few months of acting school. An old friend reached out to me, an old flame of sorts with whom I'd spent the better part of a year madly and presumably unrequitedly, but ultimately harmlessly, in a kind of love from which I'd managed to salvage the pieces compatible with an intimate but platonic friendship. An old friend reached out to say hello, and would it be weird to say hello after so many years? And I said, of course not, and hello, and we bumbled about trying to find a moment between the time zones that separate us and our distinctly incompatible work schedules for a proper catch-up over the phone. This was a little over a month ago, when the world was a different world. And before our lives as we knew them could line up, reality split open and dropped us into a sudden bumper crop of free time and a new normal where the thousands of miles separating us suddenly didn't feel any farther than the 10 or so between me and the friend I'd had plans to have coffee with that weekend. We started up a video chat, tripping over false starts and awkward silences for a bit, but eventually finding our bantering rhythm, filling in the gaps of the 7 or so years since we'd last been in regular contact, caught in a strange sort of nostalgic in-between. Our friendship had always existed almost entirely via text, a bridge between two US states with barely any carryover of mutual friends, so we didn't have much in the way of memories to look back on, left with retroactive gossip about people we'd both known in high school and neither of us had kept up with since, and the intangible but palpable feeling of long, late nights on Facebook chat, flirting without flirting, and trading elaborate theories about Shutter Island and Inception while we pretended to do homework. We talked for 3 hours. The world did not go back to normal. I've been reading my old journals, but I've also broken out my guitar, which hadn't been tuned in a year. I've got an odd little repertoire in my back pocket to dust off on occasions such as these, maybe a dozen songs total that I've actually performed, a library from the camp where I worked for 2 summers, the songs I liked in high school back when I used to make time to play and sing for hours in the afternoon whenever I could. I remembered that I had once written a song about my friend who has now been checking in regularly to see how I'm holding up and if I've watched Tiger King yet. I wrote so many scraps of songs in high school, a couplet here, a verse there, a chorus or two I could almost sing in the shower, but only 3 anything near playable, and now one of them was shouting faintly from the bottom of the well of 3 months shy of 10 years ago. I went searching for the book where I would have written it down, starting from the back so I'd know where it was and have plenty of space to keep working on it. I found it, but more importantly, I found a run-of-the-mill daily entry obsessing over the implications of a flirty without flirting text message, and I was hooked. Far from melting into a puddle of, ugh, don't look at me, on the floor, I was drawn in, compelled by this young woman I used to be, who barely knew how to be a person and who felt every little thing like a lowercase r romantic heroine and wrote like a capital R romantic novelist. I wasn't embarrassed of her. I felt for her, confused, excited, living for the first time in New York City and facing the gaping void of the future back when it looked like glittering possibility and promise without rent and bills and student loans that don't get paid by passion. I've been sifting through it all, the good and the bad. My handwriting becomes almost entirely illegible somewhere late in 2012, but I fought to piece it together anyway because that's where the really juicy bits are. I went looking for the fun, girlish indulgence of the cute boy in the high school marching band who barely spoke to anyone for 2 years until he asked me to homecoming, only to find the absolute depths of my all-consuming eating disorder, page after page of aggressive meal planning and calorie counting and documenting every craving I absolutely would not indulge, unironically calling my diet full anorexic mode as if that were a good thing. To clear my mind, I read a whole semester of college crushes, a techie upperclassman I called nerdy blonde Ryan Ross as I documented every single time I had caught him looking my way during load-in, a heart-rending encounter with a high school heartbreak when I was in town for Thanksgiving, my first meeting with a fellow Battlestar Galactica superfan whose friendship I now know would go on to define an era of my life, pages and pages fretting whether my sensible friends would think less of me if I spent the crew party making out with a guy with a reputation as a sweetie but a womanizer who'd been probably flirting through Tech Week. I shed a tear when I realized my summer in Florence is lost to the ages because for some artistic reason I decided to use one book for both my class notes and my personal journal entries, and now it's stored with neither, gone into the ether. I've been doing other things, too, working on videos I'd had planned before, grinding through as much of my now remote day job as I can muster, calling my family almost every day, watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend for the third time while I make tacos or curry or risotto or stir-fry out of every weird little ingredient I can dig out of the back of my pantry, burning a lot of candles, eating a lot of chocolate, making a nest of pillows and blankets on my bedroom floor so I can watch horror movies and The West Wing in the middle of the day while still following the advice to use my bed only for sleeping, since sleeping well is one of the things I am not doing. I am drinking a lot of non-alcoholic Cabernet, some days right out of the bottle, which is a patently ridiculous image, but I know from experience how quickly having a lot of feelings and nowhere to go can lead me to start drinking whiskey at 2 in the afternoon and not stop until I fall asleep with the TV on and a candle lit, and since I'm coming on the heels of a sober Lent, my better angels are firing on all cylinders. My therapist tells me I am doing unbelievably well. I am getting out of bed every morning. I am keeping a relatively regular schedule. I am putting on clean clothes. I am eating vegetables. I am keeping up my daily yoga practice even if it's no more than 15 minutes most days. I am being as nice to myself as I know how to be. You do know, he said to me at our last phoned-in appointment, that there are people who can't get out of bed. I do know this. I do not feel like I am doing well. I wake up every morning feeling like all I can do is cry. I find one thing to do instead of crying, and I do it until I cry anyway. I do not know what I am crying about. No one I know is sick. I still have a job. I have been in desperate need of solitude and quiet for quite some time. I am essentially doing a dry run of the self-employed work-from-home video producing life I actively want. But the world is not the world it was, and I do not know when it will be again, or more pertinently, if it will be again, and that does things. I have a history of powering through my emotions, trying to plow full steam ahead as if doing enough things can keep me from feeling any things. I do not want to do that now. I can identify feelings that would make sense to have. Fear that someone I love will get sick, fear that I will get sick, fear and sorrow for everyone in the world who is and will be sick, fear that I will lose my job, fear that my patrons will lose their jobs, anger at my government for grossly mishandling this situation, ineffectual desire to do something about this. But when I try to unpack what it is that is flattening me, I cannot find any of these sensical feelings. I cannot find anything I can comprehend, anything to tell me which movie to watch or which song to listen to or which poem to read and have a good cathartic cry, anything to vent to someone I love who will listen, anything to just process already so I can feel less guilty for making a global crisis about my feelings, any words to write in volume 32, an unadorned black extra large unlined Moleskine 2019 Kaye journal with entries dated June 2019 through TBD beyond "This is hard and I do not know what to do," over and over and over and over and over again. The feelings I am feeling refuse to be engaged with, but still my capacity to feel refuses to take a millisecond to breathe. So I read my old journals.